So, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to discuss vagus nerve. As you're all aware, vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. So I said vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve, and it is the most complex nerve in the entire cranial nerves. You know, we have a 12 pair of, cranial nerves. So vagus nerve is the most complex among the entire, 12 cranial nerves. So, and it is very long, it's the longest cranial nerve, so because it passes right from the cranium down to the, abdomen. So it is the longest cranial nerve. And so the type of this nerve, is like it is both sensory and motor, as well as parasympathetic in function. For the sensory function, it has general sensation, visceral sensation, and spatial sensation. It has about 4 group of nuclei, which I will discuss later on. That's what is called nucleus ambiguous, which you have seen some part of it while I was discussing other cranial nerves. And there's also nucleus obstructus solitarius, which was also discussed in the previous cranial nerves, and also spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. That was also discussed in the other cranial nerves, and also the dorsal vagal nucleus, which is also part of the vagal nuclei. So the vagus nerve takes its origin from these 4 group of nuclei, similar to the previous nerve, that is the glossopharyngeal nerve, which also took origin from 4 group of nuclei. So the same thing with vagus nerve, it also takes origin from the 4 nuclei that are found within the medulla oblongata. So if you want to know the functions of the vagus nerve, actually it has multiple functions. So it has multiple functions, and so if lesion of the vagus nerve happens, majorly, there's also what we call dysphagia. That means difficulty in swallowing. Dysphagia is difficulty in swallowing, and so there's also what we call dysphonia. That is inability to make phonation. So inability or difficulty to speak, inability to, make phonation. That is dysphonia, called difficulty in making speech. There's also what is called loss of gag reflex. This is just, some of the major issues that one can have if there is a, lesion of the vagus nerve. So, we have a pair of vagus nerve, left and the right one. So the way they descend down into the neck from the cranial cavity, then to the thorax and abdomen, there are some differences, the way they relate, with other structures. But then the major important thing that people should know is regarding the recurrent laryngeal branch of the vagus nerve. The recurrent laryngeal nerve is a branch of the vagus nerve, which, one of the major differences between that recurrent laryngeal nerve of the left side and that of the right side is that recurrent branch of the vagus nerve, hooks around the right subclavian artery. So as it comes anterior to if this is the subclavian artery, for example, of the right side, and this is the right recurrent laryngeal nerve of the right side, as it comes to the right subclavian artery, it lies anterior to it, and then it hooks under it, and then comes upward like that to go and lie in between the trachea and the esophagus. That is for the right side. The one on the left-hand side, as it comes on the left side, if this is the arc of the aorta, the arc of the aorta is more or less on the left side. So as it comes to the arc, if this is the arc of the aorta, as it comes there, it lies anterior to the arc of the aorta, and then it hooks around it, and then gets up to lie between the esophagus and the trachea, similar to the other one. So the only difference is that of the right hooks around the right subclavian artery, that of the left hooks around the arc of the aorta. So I've already discussed about the 4 nuclei related to the vagus nerve, and so each of these nuclei has its own specific function. So the fibers that emanate from the nucleus ambiguous of the vagus nerve, they are purely motor. So they supply this group of muscles. That means the axons coming from this nucleus, they supply the pharynx, all the muscles of the pharynx, except one, which I discussed in the other lecture. So that is the stylopharyngeal muscle that has been supplied by the glossopharyngeal nerve. So it also supplies all the muscles of the soft palate, except one that we said that is supplied by the trigeminal nerve, one of the divisions of the trigeminal nerve, and it also supplies all the muscles of the larynx. So these axons coming from the nucleus ambiguous, they all supply this, group of, structures: pharynx, soft palate, and the larynx. The axons, going into the nucleus of tractus solitarius, they carry taste sensation from the epiglottis, from the pharynx, and from the posterior one-third of the tongue. If you can remember, even the glossopharyngeal nerve also carries taste sensation from the posterior one-third of the tongue. So also some portion of the posterior aspect of the tongue, the posterior one-third vagus nerve also carries that taste sensation, plus the area around the pharynx and also area around the anterior aspect of the epiglottis. So all these taste sensations are being carried through, from these areas down to the nucleus of tractus solitarius. Similarly, the fibers, from the carotid sinus, that means from the beginning of the internal carotid artery, and also the carotid bodies that are lying between the internal carotid artery and the external carotid artery, fibers, take, the baroreceptors now from there and the chemoreceptors from these two structures, information for the regulation of the blood pressure and the concentration of oxygen, in the blood is being carried also into the nucleus of tractus solitarius, similar to that was found in the glossopharyngeal nerve. So it means that, the regulation of blood pressure and the regulation of the carbon dioxide and oxygen in the circulation is both vagal and glossopharyngeal. So that is it. So similarly, the dorsal vagal nucleus is parasympathetic. This is one of the most important part of the nuclei of the vagus nerve because it has a very, multiple areas of supply in the body, ranging from the thorax down to the abdomen. So there are various structures that have been supplied, by this dorsal group of nucleus. So all these parasympathetic activities of our internal organs in the thorax and also in the abdomen, this nucleus now is responsible for all this. So it supplies, parasympathetic fibers to the heart, to the lungs, smooth muscles of the gastrointestinal tract, esophagus, and so on and so forth. The last nucleus is the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve, and that one carries sensation from the external auditory meatus, especially the flow of the external auditory meatus, plus the tragus of the pinna, as well as the area, behind the pinna, that is the posterior aspect of the pinna. If you can remember, there are various, cranial nerves that also carry sensation, from the ear. We talked about the spinal trigeminal nerve, also talked about, facial nerve and so on and so forth. So similarly, the vagus nerve also, carries this sensory, sensation, all this temperature, pain and touch and so on and so forth. So from there now it, carries that sensation to the spinal nucleus of the trigeminal nerve. So, Bala, this is just a brief introduction about the vagus nerve. So I will just have a break now and then I discuss the, the diagram.